Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Back with us today for a long-term weather forecast is Greg Soulje. Welcome, Greg. Great to see you.
Hello, Sarah. Nice to be with you here in our long extended weather update for the month of August, which will certainly lay things out in the short term, the medium range. We've got the fall outlook as well for harvest operations, and in our hip pocket, sort of the rough draft, early thinking from the weather guy here on what we're to expect for the upcoming wintertime season. Yeah, we're still lots of summer to go, mind you, but we'll have a few thoughts on the wintertime and how it'll apply to outdoor operations, livestock operations, and all that going forward here in the next few months.
Always good to have at least a sneak preview of what might be ahead. So we will do that before we get started. For those of you that are tuning in, if you have any questions for Greg, we got him here live. So feel free to post your questions there in the chat on your screen. If you're joining us from social media, put those in your social feed and we'll be sure to get those over to Greg as we go along. So Greg, your slides are up. Go ahead and tell us what's ahead.
All righty, and be nice to the weather guy in those comments, by the way, if you stop on by. So here we are on the 20th of August, summertime flying on by, colleges, schools, and all that kind of stuff up and back at it. And the weather guy continues at it as well, and still at it, heat. And there has been plenty of it over the past few weeks out of the Plain States areas. And it's a return, but a westward movement, a retrogression, as we call it, in the weather business of the heat. So out through Big Sky Country, still the worst of the ongoing dryness and drought-related issues, although they've seen some improvement out there. And we'll take a look at the drought outlook, at least the update on the drought monitor here, and a comparison from spring to summertime here coming up a little bit later on in the broadcast. But looks like another run at some 100-degree heat. It'll park itself across the western states here for the foreseeable future as all of North America goes under a pattern shift. And once again, we talk about, people come up to me and say, why do you talk about weather in the Pacific or in the Atlantic or the Gulf of Mexico? Because this time of the year, it drives the overall steering currents of the jet stream across North America. So with that in mind, and the heated back through the western states along the divide, in the drier spell of weather, spring grain harvest has made some pretty good progress. Nice jump. They were on the wetter side of the ledger across the Dakotas and southern Canadian Prairie the past couple of weeks. Now over the past week to 10 days, drier with some building heat. And so some pretty good numbers. About 36% of that U.S. spring wheat crop has been harvested. And over and down south of the hot ridge, if you will, a couple of spotty showers, afternoon thunderstorms across the west and southwestern sections of the country. We'll take a look at that in just a second. Now on to the Corn Belt, where, boy, the stands are looking good, although I saw another blurb on social media and talked to one of my radio pals up in Wisconsin. Somehow this wrapping around or this knotting up of tassels, I guess, is a little more of a dominant situation and problem in a few more areas of the Midwest. That's probably because of the high humidity we had for a good 2.5 weeks time frame. Those corn and soybean fields, especially the cornfields, did not relax, did not really dry out, if you will. They were going to 24/7 with crop growth and development. So there's some combining of these tassels. So the grain as the stage from that to, I guess, grain fill or the setting of ears, however you want to break up the physiology of it all. And I'm certainly no expert in that. Maybe a little bit lacking in some areas, but probably not anything that's going to put a dent in that huge corn number acreage-wise that the USDA put out a couple of weeks ago. But there's a change, a far more comfortable go of it expected here in the coming days and weeks. A couple of big farm shows, obviously, Max Armstrong's half-century of progress this weekend, actually beginning on Thursday at Rantoul, Illinois. And then right after that, it's the big farm progress show at Decatur. And each and every year, it's hot, it's humid. Not this year. Looks to be pretty comfortable and minimal rain chances down at Decatur next week, the Tuesday through Thursday. Anyway, readings in the short term between 75 and 90 degrees, the hottest over the southern Corn Belt. And again, most of these corn and soybean fields away from where we've had excess rains of late. Northern Illinois, parts of Wisconsin, Minnesota, eastern Dakota, 6-7 inches of rain. You're sitting in water. So away from the severe end of things, still look pretty good. Unfortunately, there's no big long-term widespread weather story to do anything with I guess, market conditions, and even harvest looks to be pretty good for this vantage point as well, probably early and often. In any event, through the southern states, Delta region has been the hot spot. A lot of drying out of topsoils through Mississippi, Louisiana, and Arkansas, when typically they are on hurricane watch. And normally in a typical hurricane season, it's usually the Gulf Coast that gets lit up pretty good early on because of the shallow waters. They warm up very quickly. But so far, it's been in the Atlantic basin by and large, with Erin making her way through the western part of the Atlantic. Another system that'll follow in right behind Erin, halfway between the U.S. and Bermuda. And then a third system comes off the African coast. That's going to have to be watched maybe right in the early days of September if it pans out. Otherwise, immature summer crops, harvest, all that associated with the summertime weather pattern has been moving forward. Rain would be appreciated. That is going to be focused again across the Carolinas, eastern sections, probably away from the main key ag areas, the Outer Banks, if you will, coastal Virginia, and out to sea from there. Topsoil is still rated very short, as mentioned, in Arkansas, Mississippi, Kentucky as well, and probably a good part of Tennessee as well. There's a quick little snippet on Erin, really posing no issues to ag operations, glancing blow of wind through the eastern states, high seas and surf if you're into that kind of thing. So if you are, grab your surfboard, I guess. But that system is going to influence the whole jet stream pattern across North America and kind of dip the jet stream on southward. And this is kind of a good example of how at times, if we can get systems to come out of the Atlantic, run the Western Atlantic, run up through Nova Scotia, the North Sea area, Greenland, Finland area, that's how we get the jet stream to come southward. And we get some of these cool snaps that are quickly replaced by warming and still largely dry setup. And I think that is the basis that we're looking at going forward here in the next couple of 2 or 3 months across much of the heartland, Plains, and Corn Belt. So there's Erin. There's a system. X was number one. The X number two is the system coming off the African coast that is tracking a little farther south. Will likely track a little farther south, maybe towards Leeward Islands and into the Caribbean chain. And again, this is at least a week out and probably 10 days to 2 weeks out if it holds together for something into the Gulf Coast. We do have been talking with our radio pals and other interests that work with us that got to kind of keep an eye on this thing maybe sometime into the early days of September, and a lot of stuff has to fall into position for it to actually happen. So there's the track on Erin. There's secondary weather system X coming again, almost in the same path, maybe more of a direct run towards Bermuda. Third one, again, takes more of a southerly route that is easily 10, 12 days out. So probably as we get closer to the waning days of the month of August. In any event, the Pacific, finally quiet. We had some business going on earlier on in the spring and actually summertime season. We've officially here in the weather office killed off El Nino finally. A little later than what was earlier prescribed, at least from some operations. But I think we're finally moving into what we call this neutral state to the atmosphere. I wouldn't even want to call it average, but a neutral state. Temperatures are kind of where they need to be in the water areas out there west of California. They call it, I believe, the Pacific Ocean. In any event, here was NOAA's back. I think it came out sometime in May. They continue to be very much in a much above average, both with storm intensity, storm number of storms, named storms. The left pie chart, they started off, which they, well, I should say the right one. The right one is what they started off with a 60% probability and likelihood in May, their May outlook. And then in August, they've cut that by 50%, or at least down to about 50% likelihood of the season being above average, just on the number of named storms. And then they break it down to the number of, I guess, major hurricanes, tropical systems, that type of thing. So a little backpedaling going on, all we're trying to portray here. And I still don't even think we're going to be anywhere near what that forecast is coming out to be. It may very well be normal numbers compacted into a September, October, November season. Get into November, a lot of these things stay out in the open waters of the Atlantic. Western states, finally, Great Basin and Mountain West, elevated fire risk. We've seen that much of the summertime season. Latest fire situation through western Colorado. I think it was like 137,000 acres, something like that. So we've had parts of Northern California into it, Utah, Northern Arizona, Pacific Northwest areas of Washington State, and Oregon. Of course, that earlier on, a few weeks ago, contributed to that real smoky looking sky across the plains, Southern Canadian Prairie. That came into play as well. And through the Corn Belt area is certainly setting the stage for what were some brilliant sunrises and sunsets. So just like we do on our get-togethers here on Tuesdays and Fridays, where we kind of update the short-term and medium-range thing and talk about what we'll cover on This Week in Agribusiness, we'll kind of lay the same groundwork around here before we get into the longer-range stuff. And we'll take a look at the tropics and the drought outlook in a little more detail here. But you can see that big circled area of low pressure in the western Atlantic. There is Aaron. There is the front that came through the Midwest with the drop-off in humidity. Still some work to go. There's a secondary weather system up through Montana and the Rockies that'll come southward with an upper air trough that, as Aaron moves out to sea, should really sweep much of the plains and the Corn Belt areas, Great Lakes areas, livestock country with a markedly cooler, drier, lower humidity, lower dew point air mass. And so that will feel pretty fine. Don't think it's going to be anything to corrupt any late season crop growth and development. Still a lot of heat and dry days and dry weather on the weather maps and charts as we get in through September. Later on, just a couple of spotty, sprinkly showers for the plains, cold front through the Ohio Valley, scattered showers, thunderstorms welcome into Texas, Arkansas, as well as Louisiana, the Delta region, and the outer lines of Aaron, if you will, the outermost rain bands, squally weather with some gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour into Kitty Hawk and Cape Hatteras, and northward in through coastal Virginia, some squalls there. The showers and thunderstorms continue. And there's been a big, really a drought improvement, too, for folks who are down in Florida, that Everglades area. Last spring, I think we had some fires break out. Still some work to go, but the rainy season has benefited much of the Everglades and South Florida with rainfall. And you can see that next frontal system on the move across the Dakotas, and we'll pick up some shower activity across Minnesota, the Upper Lakes region. Not anything like we have seen the past couple of weeks or the past few days, really, with these multi-inch, half a foot rainfall totals in select areas of the eastern Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, into the southern Great Lakes region of northern Illinois. Nothing like that. The system is moisture starved, and it continues its move to the east and southeast during the course of Friday. Rain along the Gulf Coast areas, and there is the next 2 days worth of rainfall. The big swath of rain through the western Atlantic, some welcome moisture for cotton belt country through Texas, the Delta, southeastern states, and through Florida, and we may eke out a quarter to half and some localized 3/4 inch amounts, and still some drier pockets outside of the rain areas that they saw across the upper Midwest and the Dakotas, but nothing to impact the rest of spring grain harvest across the Canadian Prairie and the northern plains as well. Any weather alerts are confined to 2 areas. That's heat related across Montana, the western Dakotas, and that other orange area. You see through California and down through Texas and the Delta region, heat advisories and heat warnings. And there are the slew of tropical related advisories, either tropical storm warnings, gale warnings, etc. for the coastal sections of the east. There's the fire threat still ongoing into Montana, the worst drought areas of the Great Basin. Those dry base thunderstorms, you get them going, you dry lower levels, middle and upper levels, you get some cool looking clouds, so you get a stroke of lightning and 2 drops of rain, and you're off to the races with generating fire and lots of fuel out there, I'm sure, this time of the year. At least we appear to be cutting down on the threat for these severe weather outbreaks, and just a marginal threat in the deeper shades of green through parts of Montana, the Dakotas, and down through Dixie, and across the upper Midwest, 1 or 2 stronger storms, not the nonsense we've experienced through a good part of the northern and eastern Corn Belt the past week to 10 days. So looking ahead, just like we do on these Tuesday and Friday get-togethers, Aaron stays out to sea, 1 inch to 3 inches worth of rain, and some tropical force winds, 39 miles per hour, or higher coastal sections. A couple of cold fronts, series of them on the move, and they will make it to just about Dallas, Fort Worth, Little Rock, Birmingham, Atlanta, and then they'll stall out, but they'll be the focal point for afternoon showers and thunderstorms there. Temperatures expected to perhaps not even make the 70-degree mark across parts of the northern Corn Belt and upper Midwest. Again, no worries about late season development, no frost in the forecast, nice drop in temperatures and humidity, far more conducive to outdoor work. Same applies to an easing of stress on livestock and poultry operations as well. The heat remains focused going forward across the divide, the Pacific Northwest and Desert Southwest, where it's been ebb and flowing back and forth much of this summertime season. So going forward, the upper air charts here, these are winds that basically centered somewhere around about 25,000 feet or so. They really carry the bulk of the atmosphere, the movement of weather systems. You can see that low through the Canadian prairie, the little low winding its way and weakening across the areas of east of Maine, down eastern Maine is the remnants of Aaron. But sometimes you put these tropical and subtropical and jet stream winds together and you get what we call a long wave trough this time of the year. And it's unusual for summertime, but you get them, and they help to drive air masses and weather systems southward. And we'll see just that between Saturday, Sunday, Monday. There's a couple of cold fronts embedded in that, maybe some instability showers around the Great Lakes region, somewhat up towards Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Might even see a water spout in the afternoon hours over Lake Superior. And that's about the end of it, really. There's nothing else to speak of going on. Wet weather will be organized down across the Gulf Coast. You can see a little bit of a low at times and a little bending of the winds across California. That's more of an onshore flow and may, again, help to accentuate maybe the monsoon setup over the southwestern states. But most of the weather action is to the north and east of the heartland and the Corn Belt areas with regard to moisture. Just a very comfortable air mass that you see building in behind that cold front between Saturday and Sunday, makes it all the way down to just about the Florida Panhandle and then stalls on out. So even there, at some point next week, some relief on temperature and humidity levels, but organized rains, which will be appreciated, non-tropical variety for Florida and across a good part of Texas as well, including some of those dried out, drought-ridden areas of the Rio Grande Valley. Next 7 days, you can see the swath of moisture in the Atlantic and significant moisture where we have made some great inroads early in the summertime season in winding out of the drought pattern through Oklahoma and Kansas. Drier areas have come back to light. This should help to soothe that. And I'm sure there's some of these winter wheat fields that have already been planted, I would think, at least on the southern plains. So some of that moisture will be appreciated and not much to speak of in some of the still worse, wet areas, pockets of it through the northern and eastern Corn Belt locales, really just centered on the upper Midwest going forward. And any weather hazards are related really to heat, Aaron in the short term, monsoon moisture to the southwest, and that frontal boundary stalling out in the southeastern states. So Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, some of those drier soils and poultry operations get a break on heat, get a break on humidity, and we'll get some rainfall. So you win the trifecta there. Temperatures going forward here. This is for example, look at readings going forward over the next few days. The heat is building back into the Plain States areas. Those are high temperatures. Note the shades of green, if you will. Those are 70s and 80s over the Corn Belt locales. Fast forward to Monday of next week, August 25th, daytime readings. It might be a little bit overdone on this particular model set, but the general idea is 70s and 80s, 60s for the Great Lakes region, and be hard-pressed to find anything past 90 degrees until you get from maybe that I-10 and I-20 corridor southward into the Gulf Coast areas. And nighttime lows, which start pretty mild as well, basically into the 50s and 60s. There may be some 40s into parts of the Corn Belt and 50s as well at night at some point. Into the early to middle parts of next week. So a nice welcome shift in the weather will be short term. We will talk about that here going forward, Sarah. So that's kind of the short term of it all around here on the weather maps and charts. Nice break in the heat humidity, and folks who have gotten too much wet weather, we'll see a nice easing of that. Otherwise, I guess things just continue to move along from a crop growth and development standpoint. Opportunities for some winter wheat planting. A little sketchy with rainfall, but that'll be appreciated and will ease any significant recent stress on livestock and poultry operations from the plains on eastward going forward here over the next 5 to 7 days.
And what are we looking at for autumn then? I mean, I think you're going to talk to us a little bit talking about what might be ahead, huh?
Yes, exactly. The first quick check on this was March 11th drought monitor, and you can see some of the areas through the northern and central plains Corn Belt locales. Pardon me. There's one as of the 12th of August, and we've made great inroads, and you typically don't accomplish that a lot. We had granted some decent rains and opportune rains, and we've had, generally speaking, opportune and timely rains apart and away from all the severe stuff across the plains and Corn Belt locales. So we're in relatively good shape going forward. Certainly want to get an early start typically is always the best way to go with harvest operations. No big headlines, I think, going forward on the drought scheme of things, unfortunately, from a market standpoint. So any dry areas should, with time, might see a little worsening in some areas, improvement in others, basically hold sway where we're right now. We'll take a look at that autumn outlook and how it will apply down the line. In any event, the next 6 to 10 days for the waning days of August, no big hot ridge, if you will. That's really situated through Western Canada, the Pacific Northwest. The jet stream winds are riding out of western, northwestern parts of Canada down to the Great Lakes region. Then they swoop off into the northeast of New England. So the trough is there. The ridge is weak. Temperatures are in check. Humidity is in check. Not a lot of moisture going on as well. So the drier trend will continue on. A little overdone from the feds, but the right idea that readings will be below average. But I don't foresee this being an issue where we're slowing and bringing to a halt crop growth and maturity. We're well advanced in many to most locales. Again, I don't have a firm grip on this tasseling issue that I hear from time to time through the grapevine. And then moisture as well, basically focused across the West. That's just a healthy, robust monsoon setup. There's a little feature that may accentuate some of the rainfall potential coming across California. The flow is off the Pacific, a little bit off the Gulf and through Texas. So some of the areas that need rain, Cotton Belt, always need rain, proper rain into Texas and livestock country. And we hope this will not get out of control with flash flooding into the Rio Grande Valley. Drier weather across much of the heartland. Still a skim of tropical moisture through the eastern states. Go out into the early days of September. Ridge across the west. It's flattened out. It's weak. Trough is into the northeastern part of the country. Little change overall. Temperatures, again, a bit below average, a little bit overdone, but nonetheless, it affords a very comfortable air mass for folks in the ag business, and a little slight eastward jog on the monsoon setup through New Mexico and West Texas. Probably a little more flash flood potential there. Hopefully, this will be some rain across the Divide country, up into the Snake River and Treasure Valley areas of Idaho. Maybe that'll actually rain up there instead of just generate lightning and severe weather. And again, pretty quiet weather picture through much of the Corn Belt, especially where some of the areas and fields are a bit waterlogged in some of those northern and eastern Corn Belt locales. So that's everything up to now. We shall, if you're ready to go, Sarah, unload the fall forecast here. And
let's do it, Greg. Yeah, of course.
Here we go. Here we go. And there it is. It's a neutral state atmosphere. So temps will tend to vary. Just a series of fronts on the move. Some days a little below average, some days a little above average. The heat is still present. We're not done with it, but it's really focused west of the Missouri and really centered across the Great Basin. Temps a little above average over the western and southern areas of the Corn Belt. And from time to time, a little lobe of cool air will work into the Great Lakes region and the northeast of New England. If you were to open up a textbook for late summertime or early autumn, that's kind of the way you would see the configuration of the upper air and the temperature outlook. And this is okay. Maybe a little wetter than we'd like it to see for the northern and far eastern Corn Belt locales. I think we've got two systems that bear watching in September. This is all tropical driven. So here we take away the tropical aspect. This is the asterisk and the right for the weather forecaster to change his mind. Those tropics are tough to forecast. Once we finally get a grip on the movement on them, then we can incorporate them into long range stuff and go from there. But we think there's something coming into the eastern Gulf and through Florida that'll wrap the eastern seaboard. That'll tend to slow and stall things out on the movement of weather systems. So we're kind of back into chasing showers and thunderstorms into the northern and easternmost Corn Belt. Normal moisture for the rest of the heartland, still back into a drier mode for winter wheat planting operations and livestock operations there. So that's basically the month of September. October, that will be your time to hit it and hit it fast with harvest operations. We quiet down the tropics by and large, or at least its influence across a good part of the plains and Corn Belt locales. Remember the rule of thumb, sometimes when those systems tend to track into the eastern Gulf or into the eastern states, wherever you're at in the weather cycle, it's almost a blockade of weather systems, or you tend to build high pressure pull off. That's another way to look at it. And so we've seen that on occasion earlier this summertime season. And now we're back to more or less just a late season spell of 70s and 80s and a minimal threat for any frost or freeze. And more importantly, This is the outlook for rainfall going forward. A drier pattern, not good news with drought in mind. I guess okay tending to deal with livestock, keeping an eye on the water operations and at least field work from a winter replanting standpoint. I'm sure you're done with it by then, but harvest of any summer crops, yeah, all ahead forward. And any wet weather in Ohio and Michigan is related to that low off of Florida. Take that out of the equation. Everyone is either normal or below over a wide area of the plains and Corn Belt locales. It gives you every reason, folks, to check us out on This Week in Agribusiness, where we can kind of update the longer range 4-week forecast for you and get a little better feel on where exactly these things are coming off the African coast. We've had issues regarding wind shear and Saharan dust, which dries the atmosphere, warms the atmosphere, and obviously shear takes the tops off thunderstorms. You can't get the atmosphere to spin around them, and you're hence into a quiet tropical season. And that's what it's been thus far, and probably by and large will continue to be. November, it's a neutral state atmosphere. Crack the windows open, I think, for Thanksgiving dinner. And if you're not done by Thanksgiving, don't blame me with harvest operations in mind. So there's no real cold air. Some cool snaps on occasion, probably later than average frost and freeze dates as in ending the growing season. And this is a pretty comfortable go of it with outdoor work in mind for operations extending from the Southwest into the heart of cattle country, into the Corn Belt locales. Any real cool or cold air is really situated at the Canadian border. We do carry the longer range stuff by and large on itself, does carry a couple of systems that may form in the Southwestern Atlantic or the Western Atlantic. So again, take those two tropical systems out, and those are put in from our long range forecasting here, that especially that one in Florida. Then I think we move into a little more of a drier, more optimistic November. But even if it is a wetter trend, those still will be lots of opportunities. Nothing that would idle combines for any great numbers of days with outdoor work and harvest operation is in mind. Any of the snowpack and snow cover begins to prevail across the Canadian prairie. So, Sarah, that's the fall outlook, which continues to be more bullish, I think, from an early harvest and completion standpoint. A lot more confidence on the front end of that, a little lesser confidence than usual on the back end of it towards November. But by and large, I think hopefully everyone should be with the vast majority of harvest operations done by the time we get into the first couple of weeks of the month of November. So we'll update that going forward in our future get-togethers in September and This Week in Agribusiness. And folks have been already bending my arm for the winter outlook. I don't know why.
Oh, come on. We always got to know how much snow we're going to get. We want to know if it's going to be a rough winter. We got to get those snowblowers tuned up, or we're just going to have a nice mild one. So you got any rough projections at this point, Greg?
It's just that, the rough draft.
There we go.
So you can't quote me. This doesn't count. You never saw this on this get together here. But but at the same time, this is the first time we premiere this on this broadcast here, and then we'll update it on This Week in Agribusiness. So going forward, and this is kind of based on the timing of meteorological winter, which is December 1 and concludes on the last day of February. And so we start things off in December in some ups and downs, and that can be a very benign phrase and comment, but there's no quick lockdown to wintertime expected. You'll get a little feel, a little pinch of it from on occasion into the northern and eastern parts of the country. Warmth is still going to be relative, and sometimes that's a double-edged sword for livestock operations. You're comfortable, you have the right feed and water requirements, all of a sudden you get a cold snap and moisture, and you're off to the races and trying to get confinement areas ready to go. But this should afford ranchers and livestock people to maybe get stored up and get their feed requirements and all that ready to go as we get deeper on into the wintertime season. Moisture, not much to speak of, not great with dryness and drought. Good if you're trying to wrap up harvest in the last of the western and southern Corn Belt areas. And again, the weather pattern continues to be tapping into some Gulf moisture. It still looks to be a little wetter than usual, or return to that into the northern and easternmost areas of the Corn Belt. And I would expect that we're certainly well done by this December calendar day. Into January, things get a little dicier as we get into a week La Nina, and it may be within like a week to 10 days time frame where it's literally throwing a switch, and we're right into the midst of a winter weather pattern. And we see that from Big Sky Country across the Dakota Territory into the Upper Lakes region. The cold air is getting set, ready to go. Look at the range of temperatures, and so you get that compaction of temperatures at the surface. You get it up aloft, the jet stream blows faster and faster, and you carry weather systems on in. And so January, we're off to the races on winter time, and it will be literally a shockaroo to the system from for some areas. You may just go right from a lack of a fall season into the dead of winter in some Plain States areas. So that's the thinking in for January. Then a rough draft, yeah, that's February for now. And this is I had a preset panel in there. I don't know what I did with it, but anyway, it would be inactive here. I'll even back up. We'll just do this. We'll keep it like that. Anyway, along that storm track, that below average corridor, probably a pretty active storm track from the desert Southwest into the Central Plains, right up the classic Ohio River Valley. And so that tends to put down frequent winter storms over much of the northern and central Rockies, northern and central plains, much of the Corn Belt, into the Northeast and New England. So that is the story. I'll find that at some other point, and we'll get it posted up. But the precip looks to be above average in those same areas for the month of February 2026. We're speaking of already. So that's it.
Very good.
That's all I got for you.
Nice. And we love hearing that the next week and a half is going to be some nice weather for us. I know you're going to be down at Half Century of Progress. You're going to be in the parade on the purple tractor, I believe, on Friday. So if you happen to go to this, if you happen to go to down to Rantoul to that, do watch for Greg on that on Friday. He'll be waving.
I'll get my royal wave going, or how do they do it?
You throwing candy or anything there, Greg?
No. They throw stuff at me. I don't throw stuff back. So.
And then Greg and I will be coming to you from the Farm Progress Show in Decatur, Illinois next Tuesday. So that'll be fun to be on site. No weather maps. We're just going to be having a conversation about what's ahead. So you might want to tune in for that. That's 1:00 on Tuesday of next week. So Greg, thank you so much for your time and for all your great insight here today.
Always my pleasure. And we'll get together in mid-September. Don't forget those Tuesday and Friday updates Sarah and I do for you each and every week.
Very good. All right. We want to thank all of you for tuning in as well. We appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time. Until next time, for Feedstuffs, I'm Sarah Muirhead.